Okay, groovy sattvas, let's do this. I'm talking about Zen Buddhism today. There are two types of people in this world. People who can do impersonations of Carl from Sling Blade and those who cannot. I'm one of the ones that can. Sling Blade. Check it out. Okay, what I want to talk about today is actually a really serious topic, despite that intro. I guess you could say that it's the question of evil, or theodicy is what they call it in philosophy class. Okay, here's how I got on this path today. Recently went to the apartment of a friend of mine. Why did I go there? Because he has in his possession something, this is a sidebar, but it's kind of funny. He has something in his possession called, I think it's called blue, I wrote it down here, it's blue methylene, which is a salt dye. And apparently it'll dye your skin blue. If you take too much of it, probably dye your teeth blue, so you're gonna look like a Smurf. But it's also supposedly a nootropic, which is a cognitive enhancer. He's like, come on over, I got this blue methylene stuff. It's gonna make you really smart. You'll be able to write all day if you use this. So I'm like, all right, I'll try it. It's legal, by the way. This is not like meth. It's not like Adderall or something. You can buy it on the internet. You can buy it on Amazon for like 20 bucks. So I was like, okay, I'll try some of your blue dye. I can get turned into a Smurf for a day. I went over to his house and I caught him when he was right in the middle of writing to a psychiatrist who is also a Zen Buddhist teacher. And this shrink monk was singing the praises of a Zen practice that is infused with therapy or psychiatry. And my Zen Buddhist friend was writing a repost to this idea. So here's the gist of what my friend said to the shrink monk. By the way, my friend was writing this response on a Facebook Zen group, and in my opinion, it's a really, really good idea to try and have nuanced and sophisticated conversations about profound spiritual matters on Facebook. Because, I mean, as everybody knows, this is a platform that was designed by an enlightened genius who had one objective in mind when he created this platform, Mr. Mark Zuckerberg Roshi, and that was to bring about spiritual transformation on this planet. So if you want to have a nuanced spiritual conversation, please get on Facebook with a large cup of coffee and your blue dye nootropic and get going, all right? So it's an irony alert. Okay, so the gist of my friend's response to the psychiatrist Zen teacher was this. I'll summarize it probably inaccurately. I would read to you his response, but he gets mad at me when I quote him directly, so I won't. Instead, I will misinterpret his response here for you. So I think basically what he was saying was, okay, so I don't necessarily agree with this or disagree with this. I'm putting it out there. I'm opening up my mind to the questions that this conversation with this guy raised for me as I heard my friend repeat it. Okay. So, psychiatry, psychology, therapy, it deals with healing the broken self, okay? However, one could argue from the Zen perspective that if you are dealing with the self in any capacity, you're dealing with an ephemeral, essentially insubstantial entity or thing. And thus, you're only really getting at the symptoms. Okay, you're getting at the symptoms. You're not going to the root of the problem. His point was also that it is by being broken, it is from our brokenness that we humans are driven on the spiritual path. I keep leaning to the right. I've noticed this in my videos, so I'm going to sit up straight now and give it to you like a used car salesman. It's from being broken that we are uncomfortable enough to push hard enough to break through and become bodhisattvas and Buddhas. But if you use psychiatry, for example, to fix the symptoms of your brokenness, then maybe you remove some of the inspiration to go really deep and try and solve the problem of your suffering. And by going deep enough to solve the problem of your suffering, break through human suffering, break through and transcend the limitations of and the illusions inherent in this human condition and in this human realm. What do you think about that, friends? There are real implications here. And I hope I'll be able to get at them here today with you. It's because it's a very difficult landing to stick when you jump up in the air with these ideas. Okay, so stick with me. My friend and I kept talking, and we noted together that the problem in Buddhism is what? The problem is suffering, okay? Buddhism, as we practice it in Zen, Rinzai Zen, is not a lineage, a spiritual tradition that is obsessed with or even maybe necessarily concerned with the question of good and evil. That is arguably a red herring. In Buddhism, I was taught that we deal with the problem of suffering, okay? So for example, I was having this conversation with a friend of mine, and the friend was saying, yes, Buddhism deals with suffering. She said, look, when I was a kid, I got into a lot of trouble as a teenager, and my parents got really mad at me, and my mom used to try and stop me from leaving the house where I was going to go meet up with my heroin-addicted boyfriend. And she would literally physically try to stop me. And my friend said my mother would slap me across the face. And my friend said, like, let's just look at what happened there. There was a hand, and then it hit my face, and it produced a reaction in my body that I could call pain. She said, that's what happened. But for much of my life, as I tried to work through this in therapy, I was told I was abused. I was told my mother was abusive. I was told that, I should try and have a conversation with her, or I should just forget about her and heal myself. She said, and in the end, it was all blah, blah, blah. In the end, what was most helpful for me was to drop the story, to drop the suffering. The pain is long gone. I was still holding on to the story, which was making me suffer. So she said, yes, the problem is suffering. And as I was talking to my friend, he was agreeing. The problem in life is not good and evil or fixing yourself or fixing the world. So this is an essentially non-dual perspective, and I've heard it before many times in Zen circles and Buddhist circles and Vedanta circles. Here we go. This is what my friend said. He said, basically, essentially, everything that happens is fundamentally, capital O, okay. Everything that takes place, from a hurricane picking your house up and flinging it into the ocean, to a terrorist kidnapping your child and beheading them on tape, everything that happens, because it happens within this universe, everything that happens is essentially meant to be because it was. And we don't, as a rule, and when we are at our deepest and truest as Zen Buddhist practitioners, we don't try to change the world. We don't respond to or react to all of the bad things that are happening. We instead use what's arisen within us, the suffering that's arisen within us, we use that as material, if you will, to transform ourselves and see through suffering, see through right and wrong. And when we do that, ourselves and the world begins to change on its own. So the premise that my friend was telling me was, if you get to the bottom of suffering and you use all your brokenness to break through the broken human condition and break through our broken world, baby, the light shines through. Enlightenment is manifested. And that's the only way you can do it. And if you get stuck in good and bad, I mean, what's the poem? Do not attach to ideas of good and bad and right and wrong, but manifest your true face. Okay. So you can see how difficult a teaching this is. And many people, myself included, over the years have said, no, that's quietism. Okay, you're misinterpreting Buddhist teachings. What about social justice Buddhism? Okay, what about ethics in Buddhism? Okay, what about the rules that the monks had to follow at the time of the Buddha? What about the precepts, the precepts that you speak at your ordination, to wit, my Zen friend might say, those are all tools. That's the raft that you use to go across to the other shore. But once you're at the other shore, you throw the raft aside. You don't need it anymore. Those are upaya. They're skillful means. Keep your eye on the ball. The ball is beyond good and evil, right and wrong. So, I guess the question I'm asking you today is, does everything happen? I'm not going to say does everything happen for a reason, but is it ultimately the case that we shouldn't put our energies into making the world a better place? But should we put all of our energies into dissolving the ego that makes distinctions like better or worse, right or wrong? I mean, this is on my mind because the day that I saw my friend and we had this whole conversation, I had to go do my taxes. It was like really just it's like a reckoning when you have to do your taxes. I feel like it's like the human world of bureaucracy and entanglements and rendering unto Caesar, and all of that stuff really comes to a head on tax day. So I went to see this accountant guy because I have no idea how to do my taxes here in Austria. It's like, talk about Kafka-esque. Joseph K. and the trial. That's me trying to do my taxes, right? So I go see this guy, and I get lost going to find him, and I'm on the train, and I get off the train, and it's pouring rain, and I've got my backpack, and I'm walking along, and I go and I meet with him, and then I go walking along back to the train, and it gets soaking wet, and I sit down on the train. I'm soaking wet, I'm cold, I'm depressed, I'm sad, I'm anxious, and I open my phone, and I read a story about a young woman, okay? And she's an Israeli woman, and she's a young kid, 22, like these dreadlocks, very beautiful young woman. Like, I just projected all of this story on her, like that she's, free-spirited, has a peaceful disposition, went to this rave in Israel, and you of course probably know that Hamas came, these terrorists, and slaughtered people at this rave. And this, usually I ignore all news stories for reasons I've talked about in other videos, usually because I feel like the news is triggering my amygdala, and I don't like that. But this story did not trigger my amygdala. Maybe it was because I was sitting on that subway or that bus like a sad, wet little rat, but I didn't feel upset. So this is my distinction. Like, and you might have a different distinction, but I do not like to get upset by the news, because getting upset is a waste of energy. Rather, for some reason in this instance, I was able to become sad. And sad for me is good. Sad is a destination emotion. Sad is empathy and compassion. For me, maybe different for you. Some people just get sad all the time and it's not helpful. For me, it is. I'm a guy. I'm usually angry instead of sad, right? I get angry and upset. But now I was sad, and I really thought about this woman. And I thought about the raves that I've gone to in life. And I thought about when I was, 25 years ago when I was in Hollywood, when I first tried ecstasy, and I was at a rave with my girlfriend, and we were like so peaceful and loving, and we were solving so many of my deep personal problems, she and I. She was a very interesting character, this girlfriend, and she was like a psychologist that night, a shaman, and she was in my head. We were both on ecstasy, and she was helping me, and I can't imagine being in a state of pure, admittedly chemically induced love like I was at during that rave, and suddenly hearing chainsaws and hand grenades and AK-57s and slaughter happening at this rave. And so I thought of that young woman, that young 22-year-old woman, and I really took this spiritual question seriously, as I do time and time again when I am confronted with the seemingly capital A, absolute brutality of this world, the evil, apparent evil of this world. And I weigh it against this notion that everything that happens is ultimately and fundamentally okay. Ultimately and fundamentally. I don't know what that young woman at the Israeli rave was going through. She ultimately, they found remnants of her skull, so she's dead. And to me, it seems unspeakably tragic and horrifying. And I understand then how, if that had happened to somebody I loved, I would probably want to get revenge. I would want to get revenge. And I wonder then what a spiritual response is to the problem of evil, especially when it's manifested in our lives and it harms our loved ones and etc. and so forth. You know, what should you accept the bad, evil things? Should you like make real peace with the cosmos and not judge it, no matter how bad things get here on planet Earth? Is that the non-dual path? Is that the enlightened path? Should you try and make the world a better place? Do and manifest good? Some combination of both? If you do a little bit of one, is that siphoning your, like if you do a little bit of trying to do good in the world, trying to manifest good, trying to get into politics, trying to help people, trying to cure your wounded, broken psyche, is that siphoning energy away from the spiritual project? Can the two exist side by side? Are they uneasy partners? Are they necessary partners? Am I looking at it completely wrong? I don't know. These are some of the things that are on my mind today. My friend says, dude, you're too attached to the human world. You love the human world, all the drama and all the excitement and all the tears flowing and the laughter happening. You love all of that. You know, that's his analysis of my character, and an analysis which I wouldn't necessarily disagree with, but I wanted to raise some of these, I'm going to raise this question for you today. I think it's a really important one. It's the question of evil. It's the question of transcending evil. It's the question of suffering. It's the question of transcending the suffering through Zen practice and the Noble Eightfold Path. It's a question of how much we participate in this human world and how much we withdraw from it or step back from it and let it be. Big questions and no answers. If you would like to contribute to my project of raising big questions and no answers, or no answers and big questions, you can become a patron. That's how I make my living for the most part these days. So I really appreciate your support for this channel. You can go right here to patreon.com/ShozanJackHobner. That's patreon.com/ShozanJackHobner. There's writing there, essays, there are blog posts, there's even a little bit of fiction, which I noticed nobody reads, and there are also some sits that we do on Sunday. So try to do once a month or more a Sunday sit where I give some instruction. We do 2 meditation sits, and then I do a little talk afterwards, and people can do questions or share what this sit was like for them. It's been really cool. It's been a way for us to come together and practice together. So if you want to be a part of that, you can become a patron. But I offer this stuff for free, so you don't got to do nothing if you don't want to. But I thank you for your support, and I leave you with this deep and difficult question of the problem of evil. Have a good day, friends.